So we had a parent submit a question. So I'm going to pose this to you guys. She said that she understands that she should remain calm and patient during a tantrum. She says, I can do this at home, but in the community setting, it can look very different. I don't want these tantrums to last 30 minutes, and I really don't enjoy having an audience. What advice do you guys have for tantrums in the community?
I can jump in unless somebody wants to start off. I think a lot of this has to be controlled in the home setting before we really consider trying to control this in the community setting. And yes, okay, but what happens if it happens out in the community? Well, I mean, at this point, if you're dealing with a tantrum and you're not comfortable with everybody watching or having an audience, I would suggest again, get it under control at home because it's easier to get it under control. You don't have an audience, but if it happens out in the community, you do not want to give in and reinforce the highest magnitude part of that behavior. It's probably the worst thing that you can do. So if you happen to experience, this tantrum or whatever this maladaptive behavior is out in the community, write it through, but then focus on it at home. You might want to set up opportunities to work on it at home by not allowing your son or daughter to always have or give what they want, so that if they do have a tantrum, there's the opportunity to deal with it. The other thing is you might want to look at, hey, what happens right before a tantrum? So if I'm out in the community and my son or daughter wants something and I'm not really in a position where I want to deal with a tantrum, you're better off giving in and giving them what they want, if it's possible, than dealing with the tantrum. In my opinion, I think it's worse to reinforce a high level magnitude behavior out in the community, because then you're going to have more challenges in the future. So what are the precursors? What happens before the tantrum? What happens before property destruction? What happens before self-injurious behaviors or aggression? Whatever that might be aware of it so that you can maybe avoid the tantrum without reinforcing the tantrum.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off that, because like if your child, if you know a certain situation that they're going to engage in a tantrum, waiting in lines or waiting in lines to check out, or you're at Disneyland and it's long lines there, like if you already anticipate that the behavior is going to happen, to already set up, have little toys or have a snack for them or keep them occupied and busy, because if waiting for a long time and it's just kind of being a step ahead. But if you catch yourself in the line, you can't leave, right? You're in the middle of the line, the tantrum happens. You, like Dr. Meyer said, kind of ride it out, distract, redirect, or worst case scenario that you probably don't want to do is leave the line. Not ideal in a situation where you're waiting, but also the situation that you're in probably isn't ideal because the audience factor.
I like that. Stephanie, the idea of having things to do to occupy your son or daughter during a time where they have to wait for something, I think is an amazing idea. I think, Monica, we talked about this years ago. When you travel with your children and you're on an airplane, like what are all the things we can do to set up the most positive environment when we're traveling on an airplane? Bringing little toys. I think Monica mentioned, in one of our podcasts where she was saying she wraps little toys. Monica, I think it was you that you were sharing this, where you wrap little toys and they open them up and they can play with them, and you give them a certain number of things throughout the duration of time. I like that, Stephanie. And I think the other thing that we can think of too is having a default response, anticipating that if this is going to happen, or the idea that this could happen while we're waiting in line or we're at the grocery store, have a default response for people that are the onlookers, or maybe people that are making comments. So at this point, we're trying to work on not reinforcing tantrums, and not that the audience members are going to truly understand maybe what you're trying to tell them, but if you look like you have control, you look like you're not upset, you look like you have this situation, most of the times people will back off and mind their own business. But have a default response ready to go.
Yeah. And I was just going to share a little bit that I think that people worry so much about what everybody thinks and like that social pressure. And obviously depends on where you are and if it's just like a random store that you're in or if it's like at a school function or something, it's going to be way different. But I think that trying to remember that it really is okay. Like it doesn't matter. You don't know those people most of the time. They, you know, they can think or whatever. It doesn't really matter what they think, really. And so just trying to like stay focused on whatever you decide to do, whether it be leave the store, all those things. I just feel like people feel that social pressure, and it's just like most of the time, people are there's so many parents around, so it's like they get it. They know what you're trying to do. You might have your one person that will say something or make a rude comment or something, but it's like in general, just trying to be like laser focused on your kid and forget all of that stuff around you is something to kind of remember. But
Agreed.
yeah, I think keeping them busy, being prepared, if you know tantrums are going to happen, all of those things would be helpful. But sometimes you just get caught off guard. So, and I always think like if you can, if the child isn't tantruming to leave, that's one thing, they'll function of the behavior. If the child isn't tantruming to leave, I always think it's okay, just leave your stuff and just take your kid to the car if you feel that uncomfortable, or you know, you can always exit. It's usually fine. You can leave your stuff in the cart and leave. It's, you know, so I think people forget that they don't have to be there sometimes.
Yeah.
They can leave. So
Yeah, I think that's a good one, Monica. You could leave your, you picked out all your groceries, something happens, just leave it there and walk off. I agree with that 100%.
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. If you have any additional thoughts or comments about that specific question, we would love to hear from you guys in the comments.